While everyone was busy celebrating a lower court ruling in Australia that could make Bitcoin capital gains tax free, not everything is as it seems, and some nuance is indeed needed, as always. Meanwhile, something far more ominous is bubbling up beneath the surface. The Australian Labor government is actively pushing for a tax on unrealized capital gains. Yes, taxing you on profits you haven't realized yet. And this isn't some isolated idea. Europe has been eyeing similar frameworks. The UK has floated quiet proposals. In the US, Kamala Harris supported this kind of tax outright. And had she been elected, it may have already been on the table. And in Canada, the Liberal government wanted to increase the capital gains inclusion rate to 67%. In fact, it was about to take place, but it was shelved in order to look good ahead of the election of Mark Carney in our most recent change in guard. But here's what they won't tell you. It always starts with the ultra wealthy. This only affects billionaires, just a small percentage of the population. But we need to look at history. The U.S. income tax was introduced in 1913, targeting only the top 1% at a maximum rate of 7%. Today, it affects every working American, with rates topping out at 50% if you include state income taxes. These policies always creep down the ladder. What starts as a wealth tax for elites becomes a burden on the middle class and eventually the everyday saver just trying to get ahead. And when it comes to Bitcoin, your ultimate store of value, they've got their eyes on it. Governments are watching, drafting policy, preparing to extract more wealth under the banner of fairness, all to keep their debt-ridden fiat empires on life support. And if you want to leave, of course, countries tax you on the way out, exit taxes, expatriation levies. You can change your jurisdiction, but you might still pay for it. So yes, the court case in Australia could potentially be a win, but don't get too excited. While the headlines celebrate Bitcoin, the policies lurking in the background are coming for your sovereignty. Are they going to take everyone's Bitcoin? Or will people finally rise up using this freedom tool to say no to broken systems and yes to extreme ownership, censorship resistance, and self-sovereign money? To help unpack this growing global storm, we've got three of the best minds in the space joining me today. Pete Rizzo, Bitcoin historian and editor at Bitcoin Magazine. Joe Hall, or Joe Nakamoto, as many refer to him on X, independent journalist documenting real-world Bitcoin adoption around the globe. And Craig Raw, creator of Sparrow Wallet, one of the most powerful tools in Bitcoin self-custody. Stick around. You guys aren't going to want to miss this one. I am Ben with the Btcsessions. This is your bullish session. All right, I want to welcome to the stage Pete Rizzo, Craig Raw, and Joe Nakamoto. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. How are you guys doing?
Awesome to be here, man.
All good. Awesome. Well, gents, I want to get the conversation started a little bit before we find out why you guys are also bullish, and just chat a little bit about this whole Australian tax case, or it's not even a tax case, but people are interpreting it as relating to the tax laws. So this was the article in question from Financial Review here, AFR. This court case could make your Bitcoin profits tax-free. And so it says, a judge says Bitcoin is just another form of money, which means it could be exempt from capital gains tax. It upends the Australian Taxation Office's approach to taxing cryptocurrency. It could open the door to millions in refunds. They say the judgment, made public for the first time here, was made as part of a criminal case against a former Australian federal police officer who allegedly stole almost 82 Bitcoin in 2019, which would be worth 13 mil today. So if upheld on appeal, this decision could mean taxpayers who have paid capital gains on Bitcoin transactions are eligible for refunds, which are collectively worth between around $500 million and $1 billion. This is from tax lawyer Adrian Cartland, who acted as co-barrister for the defense. And the quote here, the reasoning totally upends the ATO's view because it was held that Bitcoin is Australian money. That is, it is not a capital gains tax asset. Therefore, acquisitions and disposals of Bitcoin have no consequences, tax consequences. The actual judge in the case said, I find the argument that cryptocurrency has not yet reached a state that is comfortably analogous to a form of money unpersuasive. In my view, that being a form of money is sufficient to enable Bitcoin to be characterized as property, that is, to use the words of the statute, as other intangible property, and I so rule. I'll say that I've got to say that the defense's case is pretty bad when you're looking at it. They're saying that they were saying that it can't be property because it's digital, and if that was property, then things like likes on Instagram could be property. So it was a pretty bad defense case. Dale, a Bitcoin mentor in Australia, he pointed out that.
Oh my God, you read this?
I did.
Oh, wow. I scrolled through the first couple of lines. I was like, oh, this is going to be good. And then distracted. It's very long. So I'm glad you're bringing it up.
Yeah. So Dale's in Australia. He looked through everything, and he said that the akin to Australian dollars thing by the judge, it's a quirky analogy and unlikely to survive appeal when the Supreme Court's already drawn a line in the sand. And he also said that tax isn't the magistrate's turf. Again, they are not the ones that really get to decide what is a tax ruling and what is not. And obviously, the Australian Tax Office is not your friend. Even if they appeal somehow, the appeal gains traction. Good luck prying refunds from the ATO. They've got deeper pockets than anyone, and they'll fight to the death. They've done this many, many times before, and it's unlikely to reach a resolution by 2030. So, don't get overly excited about the case. But just to contrast this and the excitement around this, to give any indication, they're really looking at adding this wealth tax in Australia. So they have labeled the Labor's controversial plan to impose hefty taxes on unrealized capital gains as a wealth tax. The government plans to slap a 30% tax rate on funds above 3 million. So a lot of people may be saying, oh, it's not that bad. With Labor and Greens expected to join force in the Senate to pass the legislation after the Prime Minister's resounding election victory. So again, stuff around the unrealized capital gains tax, as I said in the intro, there's no shortage of government trying to take money away from people. I would say in the US, you guys have got a nice little reprise from that. There's movement in the opposite direction, which hopefully doesn't get undone in another 4 years. But we shall see. In Canada, things aren't looking so hot. I remember looking during 2020 and the lockdowns at Australia thinking, oh, geez, at least we're not Australia. And then the trucker protest hit and my face. So so I mean, we're pretty much in line with whatever Europe and Australia does. So I just kind of want to, in general, get a read on what you guys think about this original kind of tax case, but also in general, if governments get too heavy-handed with this kind of stuff and start taxing unrealized gains, and that begins to become the norm as income tax have done, do people en masse lie down and take it as they did with income taxes? Or is that enough actually make people push back? So Pete, I'll go with you. Get any general thoughts that you have.
Well, in the article, we always love when news outlets use the word could. Anything could happen. There's a lot of exciting coulds in that article, though I think, as you pointed out, maybe not so much action as a result of that. But yeah, in terms of taxes, right, there's some exciting stuff happening in the U.S. You mentioned on the state level. Another kind of similar story that got a ton of fanfare was, Missouri saying that would get rid of capital gains tax on Bitcoin and crypto pretty recently. Texas talking about doing the same, but in reality, federal taxes still apply. There's plenty of ways to apply a tax, even if it's not a direct tax. They'll come up with a new tax. To your question of whether, people will kind of rise up, the verdict's still out. It's been, 100 years since the Federal Reserve. I think frogs in the pot, still boiling. I think it'll take a while, right? I think people have to wake up to the Bitcoin system and know that's outside of that. And then Bitcoin has to be able to get outside of that, right? Which it hasn't really, right? In the US, the tax law around Bitcoin is still quite bad. So, I don't know. I wish I was more optimistic, but I would say if you're asking about the tax regime, I think it will find continued ways to expand.
Yeah. It's are Bitcoiners the frogs that have already jumped out of the pot?
Could be. I'm still paying a lot of taxes though, even though I've bought Bitcoin. So
of course you are. That makes
I'm doing something wrong.
You should definitely always pay.
Round of applause for Pete for paying his taxes. Good man.
Yeah,
As we all
I don't know. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe I need to watch some more Btcsessions tutorials.
Hey, I think it makes entirely a lot of sense that every person should pay every penny of tax that they owe.
There's your soundbite for the episode.
Yeah, yes. would love to get rid of the capital gains taxes in the U.S. though, and I think a real possibility, Bitcoin and crypto maybe get exempt from that, and Bitcoin purchases need to compete, right? I'd love to see that happen.
Yeah, fair enough. Craig, what's it like in your neck of the woods in and around this realm? Government's gonna government and continue to scrape away money. What's your vibe where you are?
Yeah, I mean, it's not dissimilar from the rest of the world. Capital gains tax applies. I think with this judge, all credit to her for stating the obvious, that Bitcoin is money, and there's no comfortable argument you could make that it is not money at this point. But, I don't expect her ruling to have any particular weight. I don't think it's going to carry. And everyone's a scammer, and governments in the world are as well, and they're going to keep on trying to scam you. The one hope that I have of all of that is, I think, if you look at the rise of different AIs and how they're going to pay each other, how the AI agents are going to pay each other, it seems very likely, or very unlikely at least, that they're going to use fiat rails. It just doesn't seem likely to me. So hopefully, if we have this kind of wave of AI, there'll be sort of a pressure from industry which comes from outside of Bitcoin and Bitcoiners. There'll just be this kind of need to say, guys, this capital gains thing, it's insane. Like, it's really holding us back. And as a result, there'll be a sense of, if countries want to get ahead, they need to unlock these AI agents, enable them to communicate value to each other, and as a result, do so in a way that doesn't have all this burdensome tax regime attached to it. That's my best hope. I'm not saying I believe that's going to happen. It's just my best hope for it.
That's an interesting angle, because in a way, AI data centers have already taken the heat off Bitcoin in one realm. Nobody's really protesting how much energy AI is. I mean, there's always going to be some people, but it's much more palatable to people to say, well, I like ChatGPT. So
I was thinking about it. They're going to look where your AI is based. Maybe your AI will have to move jurisdictions. Where will you base your AI, right? You'll have to. Can you register it somewhere? I don't know. Seems like you're right. Big evasion opportunity there.
Yeah, and so if again, what you're saying, Craig, where you have AI agents where there's special exemptions, imagine the hoops that people will jump through to say, well, it was my AI agent. It wasn't my money. It belonged to the AI to be exempt from those taxes. So it just creates a whole new can of worms, which I'm here for. Happy for the
new unhosted wallet analogy. You've got an unhosted AI agent, and you need to pay those.
Well, with an unhosted wallet,
yeah, truly unhosted
yeah.
With my unhosted AI, or not even my AI. I just made it. It's out there. Yeah.
What is the state of AI and Bitcoin stuff? Has anyone looked into the latest?
Tether had news last week about their new wallet kit that AI agents will use, but because it's Tether, you know, it's Bitcoin and Tether that the AI agents can transact with. So again, you know, you've got the biggest company in Bitcoin doing the Bitcoin thing, but also with Tether alongside it. It was called, was it QVAC? QVAC? It was literally only a couple of days ago, because we've been talking about how AI agents will, you know, transact with Bitcoin autonomously and doing their own thing for a while. But I never realized that, yeah, there would be other tokens part of that equation. So it's always going to be, you know, this Bitcoin and everything else. And the crypto guys, I'm sure, would love to jump in on that as well.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Joe, quick little bookend to this general topic here, but I mean, you've traveled the globe. You've seen a lot of places where Bitcoin is taking hold or not, and you've seen a lot of Bitcoin circular economies and how people are handling it. In the face of all of the stuff that we started with here, is there a favorite spot that you've seen that you think is most promising from a freedom perspective and a Bitcoin perspective thus far?
Well, that's such a relevant question, because interestingly, before you brought up this Australian article, an Aussie had reached out to me, like he emailed me maybe a week ago and was asking me that exact question, like where could I go to be, you know, the most Bitcoin friendly and also like comfortable for me and my family. And I keep pointing to Madeira right now, because unless you're really keen to live in a sort of emerging market or somewhere a bit more adventurous, then, and if you have a sort of European focus, then that is the place I think you would go to. There is like Arnhem in the Netherlands, where there's like 130 Bitcoin friendly merchants, and it's the oldest running Bitcoin circular economy in the world. And it's like a really cool place. But if you want to truly be like in this sort of sovereign state where you can, you know, buy your own land, build a house on that land, arguably with, you know, Portuguese bureaucracy, put a solar panel on the roof, put your Starlink in the garden, or on the roof, maybe not in the garden, and, you know, grow your own vegetables, have your own chickens, do all that sort of stuff, and live in a local community where you probably know your neighbor's name, you're probably able to leave your kids, you know, playing, and there's no issue with that. I think it still is Madeira for me. But if I was to look elsewhere and, like, you know, put my adventure, you know, put my Indiana Jones hat on, I don't know, man, like Thailand, there's a lot of cool stuff going on there, particularly in Chiang Mai. Jimmy Costro's got a really cool movement going over there. He's built this thing called the Bitcoin Learning Center, and now lots of OGs and devs meeting there. I think it's bi-weekly, maybe monthly. And he does a lot of content in Thai, and you're seeing some positive developments coming from Thailand as well. That's somewhere I spent 2 weeks there in November of last year. El Salvador, I don't know, man. Like, it feels like Bukele's party in every sense of the word. Like, you know, his actual, like, it was a bit of a party for a while. I feel like we're getting to a closing time, aren't we? He's done a few interesting things recently, and bending the knee to the IMF, probably the worst thing that we've seen so far there. So yeah, I'd probably point to Madeira, and then yeah, also close second Thailand. But then again, where Craig is also awesome. Like, the entirety of the Garden Route in South Africa is peppered with Bitcoin friendly places, and there's also a lot of local community leaders there. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of pinching a little bit from what I want to say as my why are we bullish thing. So can I just say something briefly on the Aussie article, the AFR one?
Yeah.
Because the writer, Joanna Mather, sorry, I'm saying your name wrong. Well, the first thing is the AFR is kind of like the FT in terms of it's prestigious in Australia. At least this is what my one Aussie friend and ChatGPT tell me. And so the fact that you have an article on there which discusses the idea of Bitcoin being money and is not just slamming Bitcoin for the sake of it, and clearly they've understood Bitcoin at least further than, you know, 2 hours of study, that's a really good indicator. And we are seeing more and more of this around the world, unless you go to the UK and you read the actual FT. And if you look at Joanna's work, like, she's been writing about Bitcoin for the past 2 years now, and most of the headlines have been like neutral to semi-positive. So there's that, which is kind of cool and kind of interesting to observe, because, you know, when you dissect one article, it doesn't make a lot of sense unless you look at the whole sort of schema of what's going on. And I think that's good from Australia. But then, as you point out, Ben, against this backdrop of we might be taxing unrealized gains, I mean, I thought that was the narrative of, was it 2023 that what's that awful senator called? Senator Warren was big on that, and that was at the same time that we had the EU unhosted wallets nonsense in Europe, which, you know, some of these things you just see them sort of pop up in, they almost come in cycles, don't they? So
yeah, it's a little scary. Again, just the I think an unrealized capital gains tax on just the wealthy is probably one of the easiest things that they'd be able to pass, and not have massive pushback from your average person, because it's so easy to say, oh, these rich people, you know, they need to give part back. And what won't be realized is, with inflation, without even having to really change the thresholds, eventually everybody ends up in that bracket, because it's all nominal. It's based on, like, what did they say? If $3 million or something like that. I mean, like, a house in Canada is like $1 million, like your average house. So, like,
really,
yeah, it's crazy. It's like, it's I mean, Canadian dollars. So lob off 30% there, but still, like, the average house, like the housing prices here are insane. You go to Vancouver, you get a shack for $1 million pretty much. You know, here in my city, $1 million is like a nice house, but not a mansion or anything. It's like, you know, starter homes in your average suburban neighborhood in Calgary, which is not one of the, you know, it's not Vancouver or Toronto, are $750,000. Yeah. So
that's why I think, like, a lot of this tax stuff is going to get worse before it gets better, because I think, like, the thinning out of the bottom and the middle of the economies, that's where you start to get, like, the, you know, unrest, and, you know, the inflation has been a topic for 4 years now. You know, it's like, I've got family members who are, you know, young people who, like, you know, 30 years old, should be prime earning, you know, still just trying to figure out careers, right? And I think, like, that's where it's you know, this, I think, you know, as people who are interested in Bitcoin, you know, we have a lot of, like, you know, confidence in these, like, rights and privileges that, you know, in the US were allowed under the Constitution. But yeah, I mean, that is definitely being eroded socially, I think, pretty heavily. I also live in the Northeast, so, you know, there's probably nowhere on earth that has been eroded more than there. So you know, perhaps that's a reason that I'm not super bullish. But I think,
yeah, fair enough. Well, I feel like I need to cheer you up, Pete. So I think what we're gonna do now is we're gonna shift gears. I'm gonna stay with you, and I'm gonna find out why you are bullish. So we'll turn that frown upside down. What currently does have you excited in Bitcoin? What are you happy about right now?
Well, I was going to say that there seems to be a lot of new buyers coming in the industry, and they seem to have a you know, a lot of money, right? And that's very exciting. But jokes aside, yeah, I mean, look, I think that you know, Bitcoin is becoming a force globally, right? You know, one of the headlines I was going to mention is just, you know, we've seen this kind of strategic reserve narrative, like, really take off. Like, it came in the US, but now you're here, like, South Korea, Latvia, Sweden, Panama the other day, like, coming out and starting to kind of pass laws. So I don't know. I think that you know, perhaps as Bitcoiners, we've tried to route around the legal regime, and I think it's only gotten us so far, right? In the US, you know, Bitcoin has to compete against stablecoins now, right? And we do need some sort of legal changes, I think, to facilitate that. So yeah, I think I'm pretty bullish, or getting pretty bullish on this idea that perhaps the legal system can do something about it, since it seems like there's so much activation around the globe. So I know that people are not super bullish on the political stuff. You know, certainly I feel like it's a bit played out at times, but my hope would be that it can actually translate into something useful. I don't think we've seen that yet, but yeah, certainly getting rid of a lot of those restrictions and getting to a level playing field, I think would make it a lot easier for Bitcoin to really start taking off.
Well, and I mean, that's kind of what I think in general plays out. If I mean, we're kind of just witnessing game theory take place, and an affirmation of, yes, there is value here. And so when you see governments and legislators start to say, okay, we want to have this in a reserve, or we want to have some sort of favorable legislation towards it, it's an indication that, you know, while we were the crazy ones for being so early, we're directionally correct in what is going to play out. And I think that it could have been, I mean, from what I've seen so far, it could have been far, far worse. And it was already going that way, especially in the US, even just last administration. And the turnaround, I mean, the beginning of this year has been crazy, watching what's happened in the US, but also on a global stage, just people begin to go, oh, we actually have to pay attention to this. So, I mean, it can it be undone, do you think? Or are we kind of just on that trajectory where?
No, I mean, the tipping point is, I mean, I view it as sort of we're out of the first innings of the industry. I think we're no longer early. You know, after the election, I think that was the demarcation. We're no longer early. It's fully mainstream. And just yeah, I mean, look, you start doing the math with, I've come around on the Michael Saylor kind of view, right? I think I was maybe a bit dismissive of Michael when he came to the industry, and I've spent a lot of time kind of thinking about why that was. And I think I was taught kind of like in Bitcoin to think that like, we would get leadership from like technical people or like people who looked a certain way, maybe looked like more like a Jack Dorsey than a Michael Saylor, right? And I think what he's doing on the corporate level is just that's going to be this cycle's big thing. Whatever you think about it, that's where we're going. And the idea that you're going to have multiple billion-dollar companies start buying Bitcoin en masse. I mean, I think that movement is just going to wake a lot of people up to the core value proposition, was the scarcity part, right? So maybe like abstract all the bells and whistles, because there's a lot of stuff that's not so great, right? Like it's moving Bitcoin ownership and exposure to like, share structures where the person doesn't have custody. There's, loading these capital vehicles with a ton of debt and like hoping they don't spiral out in the eventual bear market, which we know is going to happen, and could be actually exacerbated by how these companies are structured. But look, they're getting the word out there about the scarcity piece, right? And I think that's becoming something that now is like, it's entering a different year, right? We've been saying it for a long time. There's only 21 million Bitcoin. I've been saying it a lot. I've known it for a long time. I feel more recently that, there's only 21 billion. Even I feel that, right? And I think that's kind of the message that stuff sends. And that's just waking people up and getting activated to what you were talking about with the game theory. There's a lot there that is not great, not culturally aligned. I know Joe's gonna pick it apart.
No, I'm listening and with open ears.
Yeah, well, I think that's where we're going, right? I don't know if it's good. That's what's happening. The train on that, I think, has left the station, right? I think, with the Cantors getting activated, with the Trumps getting activated, with, Jack Mallers going to join Tether to do the company, like that's what's happening this cycle. That's going to be the thing. And I think it'll play out. And, what's the upside? The upside is it's going to send this message out and it's going to broadcast it really loud. The downsides are real. The trade-offs are real, and I think educators are gonna have to get the word out, because there's a lot of people who are gonna come into Bitcoin this cycle and get exposure to Bitcoin in ways that probably aren't what we want them. We would probably don't want them to have those experiences, but
yeah, it seems like we've transcended. We've well since transcended the Bitcoin has no value, Bitcoin is beanie babies kind of thing. We're solidly in the Bitcoin has value, but it's not money phase from a lot of people. I can't wait to get to that final part.
Just on the because the institutions are coming was like the meme from 2017. I remember that was like,
well, every cycle has the meme. But it feels realer this time.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And yet I thought that the narrative for this cycle was more aligned with nation states are coming. Sovereign nations are buying Bitcoin or are going to mine Bitcoin. And it turns out that, I mean, it feels like every other day now there is a new Bitcoin treasury company that's leveraging themselves up to the tits to buy Bitcoin.
Those are the new ICOs. I bet there's going to be 1,000 of them. They're going to be, the question really, I think, is what does the wreckage from that look like? And that's why I bring into like the negative aspects of it, where it's, you're going to have a lot of people who have exposure to Bitcoin, quote unquote. But what do they really own? They own, shares of these like opaque equity vehicles. But look, I mean, we've seen a lot of different cycles in Bitcoin adoption, right? I think where the zen that I've reached, right, is that there's, you know, sometimes in the cycles if we focus on certain properties, right, but that doesn't mean the other properties go away, right? Because we still use Bitcoin for AI stuff. Bitcoin's still just as good in developing countries. It's just that I think a lot of the people who onboard are going to get a specific flavor, and that flavor is going to look like the orange tie, the guy in the orange tie, right? Like that's the new thing that's happening in the cycle. And so, yeah, the question is really like, what does that look like? How does it play out? The upside is, you know, what MicroStrategy has done is going to be done at a larger level. The downside is, yeah, absolutely, we don't know what happens when the leverage washes out and, you know, you get the crash there. You know, I know that this is called Why Are We Bullish, so I don't want to get into too many bearish scenarios, but I have some real bearish scenarios that I can draw.
Fun. Why are we bearish coming next? I was in a wave pool this weekend, and like in the UK, and this guy like asked me what I did, and we got chatting, and he was like, "Oh, so you're into Bitcoin?" So this Michael Saylor guy, like, if he was, and I was like, "Whoa!" Like he like just went straight in with that, and that was the first time I'd had it where someone just said Michael Saylor is the first thing they think about when they think about Bitcoin, because he's just such a convincing advocate. And he went on to say, like, the fact that he is so convincing and that he is just so eloquent, and, you know, the way he talks, it is really, really incredible the way that Michael Saylor just packages up his ideas. And he went on to say that even if this guy was selling me, you know, petrol, or he was selling me, you know, Beanie Babies, I would probably consider leveraging myself up with Beanie Babies after that. And he was almost saying that he's so good that he's too good. And I'd never really thought about it that way before, because if your first touch point is someone that is as squeaky clean and this orange tie and a multi-billionaire who's turned his company around, you are kind of looking at that and being like, that is too good to be true. Whereas a lot of us came through this idea of like, is it going to work? You know, you got to put the work in to understand it, and then you understand it. Whereas this guy is just literally putting it on a plate and saying, listen to me and then this podcast, and you will, you know, buy Bitcoin, you use your company to buy Bitcoin. And that's something that I just thought was quite interesting. I was thinking about that when you're discussing the nature of this cycle.
Yeah, I keep thinking like why I missed it, and like it seems so obvious, like in retrospect, where it's like, okay, you were gonna get this era of Bitcoin probably where like the financial people were really into it, right? Like that never really happened, right? If you look at all the kind of 2013 was very merchant focused, 2017 was very Silicon Valley ICO kind of stuff. 2020, 2021 was very counterculture, you know, like felt like Bitcoin was cool and like politically, politically outside the mainstream. I felt like we're always going to get this age where it's like the stage where it's like CFOs and accountants, like, you know, we're going to think it was cool. And I'm like, and I always go back, I'm like, why did I miss that? Because that should have been like pretty obvious that we would get that thing. I think it's just that personally and culturally, it's like I wanted something else. Like I still, the thing that I think is interesting about Bitcoin is the changing of the financial system and moving away from kind of the US led system and the Wall Street led system. And so the fact that this is kind of entrenching that, you know, that doesn't excite me, but I think it's going to excite a lot of people. I think that's the thing that's starting. And I think your experience, I think, is probably going to become what looks like, you know, pretty normal in a few months to this year.
Or they miss it entirely, and, you know, a lot of the finance people are just going straight for the tickers for Bitcoin related companies, and I think that's quite interesting. They end up down that rabbit hole, and it trends a lot. Like MicroStrategy must be one of the most talked about stocks of the past 2 years now, and now everyone's talking about Semler, and I can't keep track of them all.
But I'll give you an oddball one, like, right, like it's like, can you really do bad by holding Bitcoin, right? Like if you hold Bitcoin, like, are you really, like, what's the worst scenario? And like you can even look at like very extreme scenarios, like so there's this famous kind of 2017 ICO. It's like the worst ICO. They did a year-long ICO. It's called EOS, right? And they have 150,000 Bitcoin. And now you're like, okay, well, it's like they can just go public, and they're all of a sudden they're a Bitcoin treasury company. You prorate distribute shares to everybody who invests in the ICO, and boom, they're a public company, and they're regulated in America. And they're a large Bitcoin bank, right? You can just poof, you know, like this thing that was like this awful nuclear toxic waste level thing in the industry, you know, could just be reborn because, you know, the he who has the Bitcoin right now, you know, has the opportunity, right? Like everybody wants it, they have it. You know, the U.S. regulatory system has free and cleared them. They've paid their fines for delivering no products to these investors. So you know, you look at that case and you're like, oh, okay, well, like this company that's been defunct for like 7 years, like they own a bunch of Bitcoin. You can do something with that, right? You can rebuild that into something useful, hopefully, or maybe it just continues. Like I don't know, right? But I think the lesson of the story there is people who own Bitcoin have tended to have more opportunities than people who have less Bitcoin, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I was to comment on that sort of narrative, I think the one thing that I could criticize Michael Saylor for is the lack of a sort of narrative around proof of reserves. I think that that's something which is such an important part of the Bitcoin story. And, you know, we have a lot of doubts. You know, you can't log into X without seeing people talking about paper Bitcoin these days. And the simple truth is there's no way to know either way. We just don't know. You can argue about it, you can debate it, but there's just no way to know. So, you know, if he had done his Bitcoin for corporations with a stronger focus on that kind of thing, I think we might save ourselves a lot of pain further down the road.
Don't you think, like, even if they prove that they own the Bitcoin because it's tied up in so much leverage, it's like they would just even if they like owned it and like you could see it in proof of reserves, it could still just like poof at some point, right? Like it just, but maybe you would see it in real time, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that, you know, it would at least be a little bit more transparent what they're doing. And it would create more trust in what they're doing. I'm not saying that that trust would be fully deserved, but I'm just saying it would create more trust. Right now, we have a lot of people, and I think it will just keep on. I think this is a narrative that's going to grow, that people are going to look at these new entities and they're going to say, well, do they actually have the Bitcoin? You know, maybe MicroStrategy has the Bitcoin that it says it does, but what about this new XYZ Limited? You know, I didn't necessarily know anything about them, and their guy, you know, we only heard about him a month ago. I just think that that's a narrative which is, as I say, is going to grow. I think it's a missed opportunity that could have been built on right from the start, and now it's going to have to be reversed engineered in, probably on the back of one of these bear market events that you mentioned.
I think yeah, I think the proof of reserves thing is important because it's not only just, oh, does MicroStrategy have the Bitcoin, but I mean, where is it custodied, and how many other entities is that exact same institution custodying for, and is that institution, you know, is there instances of paper Bitcoin there? Because at least if there's a specific set of UTXOs that belongs to an entity that everybody can audit, you can begin to piece together, and you can say, okay, well, this company says they have this much, this says they have this much, these are their UTXOs, and you can start to piece together. Whereas when it's opaque, like there's no like on-chain footprint to specifically point to, and that's where you can get into, well, you know, until the maths out to more than 21 million Bitcoin, then there's no for sure way to say like, oh, okay, well, there's clearly, I mean, obviously there's paper Bitcoin somewhere, but you know, it makes it a lot harder to dick around when they can say these are our UTXOs. It just, yes, it can still disappear in like liquidation events and everything, but I think it cuts down on the paper Bitcoin side of things.
Presumably there are lawmakers already like drafting these kind of laws, right? Because the proliferation of these Bitcoin treasury companies, surely that there's going to be someone sitting somewhere thinking we have to have more transparency with this sort of system, right? Because it is
arguing about what's a commodity and a security.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't hold much up for that, but yeah, it would be nice to think. I agree.
Yeah. I would hope that I feel like it's inevitable. There's going to be some sort of, once again, larger scale blow up where where's all the Bitcoin? It's happened every single cycle, you know, from Mt. Gox to Quadriga to FTX and question mark for this cycle, right? And so it's just every time we assume that we've transcended the era where we lose a bunch of Bitcoin because it's a larger institution, and now that banks are getting involved, oh well, you know, it's too mature now, nothing like that could happen. I call bullshit. I think it happens again, and it keeps on happening larger and larger until either it gets regulated that you must show the UTXOs, or until enough companies see enough blowups and say, we're going to show the UTXOs, and it becomes suspect if you don't, where the industry itself just demands it, or the customer base demands it rather. I feel like it'll end up being regulated. I worry about the regulatory whipsaw of the potential scale of a blow up this cycle. And if next election cycle it goes to the other side of the aisle, Elizabeth Warren's attempted anti-crypto army will look like a bunch of pussycats.
Well, that's my bear case, right? Is I see that the U.S., like the Democrats, have absolutely no reason to be pro crypto. I think if you think that there's a above 50% likelihood of like a over 50% Bitcoin correction before the next midterm elections, they have absolutely no reason not to use that as an attack vector. And yeah, in the United States, sort of the left-wing party is really in a rebuilding mode. They don't really have a lot of popular issues that have a lot of cultural weight, but they have a pretty big hatred for sort of like tech companies, and like Elon Musk is sort of the big villain for kind of what he did to kind of flip the tech industry red. So the idea, and I think you saw the New York Post article yesterday that was critical of the Trump family's crypto business. So like if even the conservatives are saying like, hey, the Trump crypto business it's not great. It doesn't take, I don't think, a genius to say that, like, I think if there's one area the Democrats can like comfortably dig down, like, and not give any room, it's going to be on this issue because, again, they have every reason to just, want to gain political support, right? I mean, Bitcoin is fully politicized right now.
Yeah, 100%. All right, well, gents, I'm going to put a bow on this topic. I'm going to do a quick shout out to our sponsors. And then on the other side of it, Craig, I'm going to come to you and find out why you are bullish. So we'll see you guys in just a moment.
Ciao.
Bitcoin Well is the best place to be buying and selling Bitcoin in Canada and the US. And now with Bitcoin Well Infinite, it's also the best place to be making large buys at their OTC desk of over $50,000. Their white glove service gives you fast transactions, no slippage, and the lowest fees. You can scan the QR code on the screen or simply head to bitcoinwell.com/BTCsessions to sign up today. And you can share your own personalized referral link to earn commissions. DEBIFI is the best and easiest way to borrow against your Bitcoin in a non-custodial way. Funds are held in a multisig escrow where you hold a key, and the platform allows for excellent hardware like the Cold Card Mark IV and the Q. You have access to flexible conditions, the best rates, and institutional-grade liquidity. If you're looking to make use of your capital, don't sell your Bitcoin, borrow against it. You can head over to debify.com to check them out, or simply scan. All right, we are back in really quick. For anybody watching, we're going to just give away a quick few sats here over on Bitcoin Well. Again, as a reminder, when you sign up, when you buy Bitcoin, when you refer friends, you earn points, and you can use those points to either get yourself some swag or to toss a coin in the Bitcoin wishing well, which allows you to win up to 1 million sats each chance. So anybody who scans the QR code first with their Lightning wallet will be able to redeem today's prize of 487 sats, oddly specific random numbers that we've seen. So congrats to whoever happens to snag it. And no one.
Oh, I missed it. I missed it.
Run. It's not happening.
Yeah, you saw it.
We can compete.
Yeah. Exactly.
I was just testing to see if the QR code worked. That was all. It was research purposes.
All right. Well, Craig, I am going to you, queuing you up with the same question. Why are you bullish today?
So I'm bullish. I'm a developer, and living in the Bitcoin dev world is often a challenging place to be. Particularly, I think some developers would say over the last few weeks, although I haven't been too much part of that. But my reason for being bullish is I actually think that our Bitcoin developer space is more vibrant and has more going on than, frankly, any time in the past. That's my own perspective on it. There's just so many people who are creating great products, who are getting more involved, who are taking their work from a sort of on the weekend to a part-time to a full-time basis based on our much more comprehensive grant programs that we have. It's really quite impressive to see. And I think we're just actually at the start of really a renaissance. If you look at the different wallets that are coming out, the Zeus and the AQUAs and the Phoenixes that are coming up with some really interesting ways to be able to enter the world of self-custody, to be able to spend in a relatively private manner. And people are figuring out ways around all of the different roadblocks. I mean, we like to discuss the roadblocks, right? That's the sort of interesting thing, right? We talk about all these various debates about how we're going to do things, and it's quite easy to get focused on what are the roadblocks, like why can't Bitcoin have some soft fork that can enable this change or that change? And it is a way of seeing the world, and it's a frustrating way of seeing the world. But in the meantime, there are many devs who are just getting on and building things, and they are creating products that the wider world is finding useful. So for me, it's really very encouraging to see. And I work with developers who build libraries. These are kind of unsung heroes, the guys who just build the stuff in the back end that no one really knows about. They just don't get much exposure to the kind of Bitcoin community. They just do their thing, but they keep building, and it's a lot of work, and it is a lot of responsibility, but they do it anyway. So that's really my reason.
I like that. As again, somebody who gets to make weekly tutorials on all of the awesome tools that are out there. There's never a shortage of stuff to cover. And, after 9 years of it, again, some of the first questions I ever got asked when I started making videos, oh, you're making tutorials on Bitcoin. Aren't you going to run out of stuff to do? And I can say that nearly a decade later, my list of stuff to cover is growing faster than I could possibly keep up with. And again, it's thanks to all of the developers building all of the awesome things out there, yourself included, Craig. I just did a new Sparrow video not that long ago because there's just so many awesome bells and whistles in Sparrow, and it just works so well. And it's like it's my absolute crutch here from my command center for dealing with everything Bitcoin. So again, thanks for your work as well.
You're very welcome. Yeah, it's as I say, it's really heartening to be in this space. It certainly gives me a reason to get up and do what I do every day, is just being able to take part in a space which has so many incredible people. Really, we are blessed with people who are coming in who really think very carefully about things. As a result, you have disagreements. You have people who are arguing about small ways of doing things and which way is the right way, and they're important. We have to, if we make any changes to this system, we have to be very careful. So it's good that we have all the debate, and it's great that we have these great people doing it. I mean, we even had Greg Maxwell coming back in. That's a bullish reason right there in and of itself. Regardless of what you might think of his most recent views, there's no denying that Greg Maxwell has contributed hugely to the space in the past. Really just an unbelievable level of thought and ideas that have come in. So great having him back.
Just on the unsung heroes part, like when Ben, you're saying you first come into Bitcoin, you sort of like, oh, okay, cool, I can send it, receive it, store it. That's about it, right? And your journey can stop there, and for a lot of people it does, and that's absolutely fine. But like when I was sort of first getting into the space, I went to a developer conference, and it was amazing because the entire day might as well have been in Chinese. I was completely bamboozled by the entirety of the talks, and they were talking about all this stuff that now 4 years later, like one of them was talking about silent payments back then. And I was like, oh, my payments don't make noises. What are they talking about? And like really basic stuff. But you realize that a lot of these devs are building stuff in the background. They're not sitting all day LARPing on Twitter. They are just quietly building. And then they go to these conferences, present these, pieces of work, and then they get discussed. And then slowly it becomes something that you then take for granted in your wallet. I use the silent payments as an example because, in Blue Wallet, you can now do that as well as with reusable addresses. And that was something that I saw being discussed a few years ago at these dev conferences. And so if people are even interested or tangentially interested, then a lot of the signal, you don't actually find it on Twitter. You actually find it at the conferences. I know that a lot of people will slam conferences for it being like, oh, it's just an excuse for influencers to get together. Yes, it is. And it's also a place where devs can get together and share their ideas. And you have to be a bit choosy about the conference you go to. Like I know they had the recent Lightning Summit in Brescia, and there was a load of talks there that, again, don't make any sense to me. But if you're in that space, I'm sure Craig would have got a huge amount of value from it. And it's a really nice reminder that there are lots of people giving absolutely all to Bitcoin, and they're not just tweeting about op return or, complaining about bitsats and Bitcoins or whatever else you want to call it. So yeah. Shout out to the devs. Cheers, devs.
And on the conference side of things too, just to and your point there, regardless of you can go to an event and you can get what you want out of it, especially the larger events where there's a lot of different stuff going on. You can absolutely go and just kind of dick around and see people and party and get drunk. Like that's a thing that happens. But you can also hone in on the stuff that's most valuable to you. Like if you don't care about the latest celebrity talking about how they like Bitcoin, then you don't have to go to that talk, but you can go to like the open source stage and like take in a talk on some new tool. So like you get to choose what you do with your time. And I do find that you can find value and you can find signal for the things that are most important to you. So, but yeah, I mean, outside of that, Pete, I want to get your thought just in general on development on Bitcoin, how far things have come. And maybe, what are there tools, are there things that you're particularly appreciative of that you really like to use?
Yeah, what are you coding, Riz? What you
yeah, I've been vibe coding a bunch of stuff. It's gonna come out and raise a bunch of money. Look, I think I would echo what Craig said. I think it's come a long way. I do find like kind of the edges of the debate space to be really fascinating. I do have some questions about where we're headed, because it does seem like we're heading to a space where there is some sort of broad kind of user dissatisfaction with the primary reference client, and there's not easy answers to how to find solutions to those things. So yeah, I've certainly been spending a lot of time recently kind of digging into those debates and really trying to understand, okay, like what are the actual disagreements here? What are the actual warring ideas here? I mean, that's kind of what I spend a lot of my time on, is trying to think about like the theoretics of like what Bitcoin is and like what the kind of great thinkers in Bitcoin see Bitcoin as. So recently, I've been pretty entranced by the fact that you have Greg Maxwell and Peter Todd and Luke Dasher taking, extremely different positions on, what seems to be like a very small issue in the grand scheme of things. But to some people, they're really existential, right? Like Luke seems to think that Bitcoin is currently failing. It's not really a view that I share, but I've been trying to kind of understand that position. So yeah, I do think that it's been interesting watching these debates, right? Because I think it says a lot about how the popular education around Bitcoin as a technology has developed. And yeah, I think there's a lot of people who are really troublingly eager to sort of discard the Bitcoin core development process without really understanding much about it. And I think there's been kind of a troubling, confusing between, what is a process, like an open process that anyone can participate in, and misconstruing that as some sort of, conspiratorial organization. That was sort of a hallmark of the kind of fork wars of the 2017 era. And it's been very interesting to see that return, but to be wielded by the very people who sort of are saying that they are in the lineage of the kind of other group from the past era. So I don't know. History starts with sociology a lot of times. And I think, I'm still trying to sort through the differences here of kind of these great thinkers to figure out what are the differences, because at the end of the day, it's right, we still have some of the people who are the deepest experts on Bitcoin who have these deep disagreements, and they seem very impassioned about them, right? For someone like Luke to declare that Bitcoin is failing, to me is like something that says a lot, right? Like you have to kind of like spend time and unpack that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I've been spending a lot of time with the debate. I would hope that it comes with a better understanding of the core development process, but it seems like that hasn't happened, or we might actually be going in a different direction with that. Which again, I think is actually okay, because I do think that there is this idea that, within Bitcoin you can dissent, right? And that's actually a powerful idea as well, right? So the idea that if you are dissatisfied with kind of the core development process, let's just say everything about that process and you're very aware of all the meritocracy involved. Oh, you guys will lose me here.
All good. I'm
gonna switch cameras. If you're very aware of that and you still want something else, right? You still want to kind of build a new client from scratch and get people to run that, and you are properly making them aware of the fact that we're not as aware of the consensus critical code within Bitcoin as perhaps we should be, and that there are real dangers of doing this, then you can still do that. And I think that's an interesting part of Bitcoin. But yeah, it's very fascinating watching what's going on.
Yeah, this whole back and forth over everything as of late. The thing that I've been happiest about is, again, that people can still run whatever they want to run. Like some people are totally fine. They're running their core. They're going to continue to run Bitcoin Core. And then others are saying, well, I'm going to run Knots or what's the other one? Peter Todd's Libra.
Or Libra Relay, yeah. But that I don't think that's an actual implement. Is that an implementation? I thought that was
I can't recall the nuance to it, but again, it's another tool in your tool belt that you have an option to utilize. I think the main point about it is the whole back and forth also just made more people aware of the idea of running a node, and that you can host a copy of the Bitcoin blockchain and the rules, and you get to decide what you run, and how just running it doesn't, people begin to ask, well, if I run a node and just leave it there, does that do anything? Or, well, no, you gotta, it's gotta have some economic power behind it. Like you link your wallets to it. Otherwise, like you're not really, it's just kind of sitting out there in the wild. It's not really, it's more of a selfish action. You want to not trust, verify. You want to run the rule set that you care about. You want the, in some instances, some of the bells and whistles and dials and filters and whatever else in your implementation. You get to choose what you run. So it's been educational in that sense for, I think, a lot of people, which is great.
I thought it was a giant psyop by the Bitcoin devs to get us all to take Bitcoin education more seriously and to get us to run nodes. I thought they were just manufacturing this.
It was pretty successful, but
you know what I mean? Like I did a lot of revision over these past month. So well done to that psyop. It worked.
Yeah. Now the real, I'm gonna just lob this grenade into the room. Do we have any BIP 177 maximalists? Are we getting rid of decimals and every sat is a Bitcoin, or are we heavy sats here? What's the read in the room?
I wasn't a really advocate for BIP 177. Yeah, I think it's the way to go. I don't think it's necessary for the project, right? Like, I think that the whole thing is kind of silly, right? I mean, if of the options, that's probably the easiest one. That's probably what I would go with. But sats are fine too. You're not going to make everyone agree, right? So
it's not a hill that I would choose to die on, but I do like it. And it makes my job easier. It makes my life easier. But it's also going to trigger a lot of people and wind a lot of people up. I think that the biggest thing is just that often people think that Bitcoin is too expensive, so it just immediately cracks that. And a lot of people say, yeah, but like it's not hard to understand the Satoshi. It's like it's not at the point of them having to understand the Satoshi. I think anyone can understand the Satoshi as long as their IQ is above,
What is the price of one Bitcoin if we go to BIP 177? It's we go from 100K down to
yeah, it's great.
I liked I like Safedin's reply where he's like, it's again the difficulty of after the fact explaining that Bitcoin's price went from this to like a fraction of a penny, but that it's still supply capped and we didn't dilute everybody. Like having to explain that would be the worst thing in the world.
I feel like it would be like just part of the news cycle for 48 hours and then people would move on to other stuff because people don't really care about Bitcoin. And that's the thing that I think that we all get so consumed with and caught up in sometimes is that the man on the street still doesn't know what Bitcoin is. And they might have heard of it, sure. They might know that it's expensive or valuable, but that's about it. And they've always seen it as something for someone else, someone that has money, someone that has their life in order, someone that is, it just seems like way down the list of like priorities in someone's life and making it dirt cheap in the sense that, you know, a sat would be the effective price, would just scrape all that away and be like, no, you can buy 1 million sats right now if you want to, or 1,000 sats or whatever.
But on the flip side, that news article of Bitcoin hitting 100K now becomes Bitcoin hitting a penny, and that's, you know, maybe you don't get the, you know, I like to say that Satoshi really had the best of both worlds by doing like bits and sats, right, or like, you know, whatever the lower denomination was, because you kind of want the exposure, right, of like having Bitcoin at 100K, because like imagine if like you had gone all the way back to the beginning and there was just no denomination, right? It was just like let's just say the sat was the only thing, right? We would still 15 years on, Bitcoins would be worth less than a penny. So like, would we have the attention and investment that we had if he didn't create the mega unit? This was my defense I gave in Lugano for like the mega unit. Why you want one Bitcoin? It was actually kind of a genius move because you got to dollar parity much quicker. You got to everything much quicker. Had it been just the base unit, again, like, would we all be here if Bitcoin was still under a penny? Would Bitcoin still be close to being a penny, right? Like, so you get this nice thing with like with the mega Bitcoins. I think that's what the Bitcoin 7.7 calls the Bitcoins, right? They're mega Bitcoins now.
Yeah, that is
so
quite cool.
With the mega Bitcoin, you know, what we got really early on was like a lot of excited, you know, coverage and people who were interested who probably just wouldn't have been interested if, you know, we were all here talking about a 15-year-old project. Where like the base unit was like worth less than a penny.
Yeah, I did say to John Carvalho that mega Bitcoin was the most compelling part of his argument because it sounds sweet.
Are you a mega coiner, bro?
I am not a mega coiner, but I will say that to your point, Joe, like and Pete, like, I mean, Bitcoin already did start out dirt cheap, and then it got so expensive that it seems what I'm getting at is this is a forever problem because if Bitcoin actually stands the test of time and is around for generations, one day a sat will be expensive. Yeah. And then everybody's going to be arguing, oh, should we turn millisats into sats, or should we, you know, like M-sats are the new sats? Like it's just, and if the dollar was actually scarce and we were trying to measure it in something that wasn't, then cents would have been out long ago and we would have had to, the cents would now be dollars. And so like I think the problem is the measuring stick that we're using. And it seems like changing the names of our denomination is we're treating a symptom that doesn't need to be treated because the measuring stick that we're using is broken. And so we're saying like, hey, the dollar sucks so bad that we need to change the names of the units of our currency.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I mean, it is a bit reminiscent of, you know, hyperinflationary countries where they just chop 4 zeros off and say it's still worth the same value. Yeah. Do we really want to be doing that? But where did sats come from? Because I know it sort of organically became the thing. But
who was on the Bitcoin talk forum by this guy named Rybook, who basically said, you know, we should name the smallest unit after Satoshi, and it just stuck. So it was like an organic community thing, right? Like someone suggested it, and it caught on. But there was a whole bunch of unit denomination arguments, like in 2011 and 2010, because there was like MBTC and UBTC, and like there's all sorts. What do you say?
Was Satoshi aware that because he was gone by this point, right?
No, yeah, this really started in earnest around like December of 2010, because like at that point Bitcoin had like some value, right? Like it hadn't yet hit $1, but it was like over 10 cents, and so then there was this argument about one of Gavin Andreessen's kind of first things on taking over the project was like this moving the decimal kind of conversation. That didn't really go so well, because it was like they actually did have names for like all of the 7 denomination. It was like MBTC and UTBTC and like all this crazy stuff, and people were arguing about it, and then they just sort of
centibits and millibits. Yeah, it was. What was it? Mycelium wallet. It defaulted to millibits, and so it was just like. I remember looking at that and being like, "Holy shit! Get out the chart. How much Bitcoin is this?"
My read on that is I think that Jack Dorsey, who tweeted that, I think he was just trying to change the conversation. I think he was reading the room, and he was just like, "I'm just gonna, throw the ball somewhere else."
He really did. Though. That thread there that developed afterwards was quite the back and forth, but. Yeah.
I mean, BitKit does label your wallet as 71,000 Bitcoin. I have 71,000 Bitcoin in my wallet right now.
Oh man, you're so gonna get abducted after this interview.
It's true.
Don't joke. Real stuff happening out there.
Yeah, I know.
What's your address, Ben? I need to send it to you. And get rid of this attack vector.
That's an argument for BIP177. Our threat vectors would decrease substantially.
Yeah,
exactly. The reason for assaulting and kidnapping one of us is
true. Actually, idiot criminals will think I'm rich when I'm definitely not. That's all the Bitcoin I have, and I just sent it to Ben. So
yeah. Except for those people with 100 million Bitcoin.
The mega Bitcoin.
Okay, so I'm going to put a bow on this topic, but not before I do a quick run through the room back to Craig's development topic. And I would love each one of you to give a shout out to your favorite, or maybe not favorite, but just a really cool Bitcoin related tool, whether it be hardware, whether it be software, or something that you think is a great tool for Bitcoiners to use, or a great up and coming thing for Bitcoiners to play with. And so I'm just really quick, top of my head. I love BIP85. I'm going to throw it out there. I use that shit all the time. And anybody unfamiliar with what that is, you have a seed phrase. You can derive from that one seed phrase up to 10,000 child seed phrases. And those seed phrases, the child ones, you can't work backwards to compromise the parent, which means that you can have, say, on like a cold card, your master seed, and then you can generate all these child seeds, and you can use those for any purpose anywhere. So for all of your hot wallets, for family members, for whatever, and then just keep a little spreadsheet of account 1 was this, 2 was this, 3 was this. Now you have one seed phrase to back up and secure for everything. One seed to rule them all. And you don't have to worry that if one of those child seeds gets compromised, that the master is compromised. It's just completely segregated, but you can always regenerate it later if you need to by just calling up the account number. I deal with so many wallets that this has been the #1 tool for me to be able to be like, okay, I'm working on this wallet. This is the seed. I'm going to generate it from my cold card and just write it down here. And then I never have to be like, oh, where'd I put that seed? Is there so many? I can just go back and find the seed from my original. So anyways.
Which bit was that? Sorry?
BIP85.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Learn something every day.
It's super useful. So it's just, I mean, I'm sure people have had over the years just seed phrases flitting around on pieces of paper. Where did I write that down? Where did I put that? Now it's just, I know where the master seed is, and I can get to all of my hot wallets and everything else through that. And I don't have to dick around with them.
That's genius, because when you gift people Bitcoin, like I often gift people Bitcoin, right? And like my, one of my best mates just had his first daughter, and I was like, oh, give him some Bitcoin. Like put it on the card, wrote it down, gave it to him. It's like, look after it. It's her inheritance, or her, university whatever it is, it's your money. And naturally, I keep a copy myself because I just don't trust that my idiot mate is not going to lose this thing.
Yeah.
But we trust each other, and that's, we're not scamming each other. And it would have been so much easier if I just did this with BIP85, and then I wouldn't have to worry about this piece of paper.
This is how you do it from now on. And same thing, like this is my, my mom, family members there, I want them to take personal responsibility, maybe have their device and their seed, but they could break their device and lose their seed. And if they're really screwed, I'm their third line of defense. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Cool. Love it. Pete, I'm curious about you. What?
I was thumbing back through there. Well, I'm in the estate planning process, so I'm trying to go the legal route for some of the stuff. So I am in the midst of trying to get some of my seeds onto different metallic devices that I can put somewhere, maybe in the ground or in a lockbox somewhere. So I'm actually with Crypto Tag and Billfodl are two that I'm playing around with. I'm trying to see like what looks the most durable and like unlosable. And then I guess on the gifting thing, I've settled on doing open dimes. I haven't had any issues with that yet, though I don't know that anyone's actually claimed them. So maybe I'm just kind of kicking the can down the road there. But for the last several weddings, I've been doing that and feeling comfortable with it. But yeah, I'm on the we're trying to get a legal framework around some of this stuff, which is a different thing. See if that can help. But the thought of we're doing a after death planning. If I'm not around to manage all of these seed phrases, what might happen. So yeah, I don't know. The inheritance side, I think, is still a big thing, right? Where there isn't an easy solution. A lot of it is it's actually taking quite a long time to try to get something that feels feasible. So that's where hobbyist attention is going. Yeah,
there's a lot to consider there. I think the tools are there, but they're not easily presentable to people. Like it's still, you got to kind of have your wits about you as you're planning for this kind of stuff currently. But I think we're getting close. There's a lot on the horizon with like Anchor Watch and stuff like that. So
very excited for that one to come out, though I don't know how much the premiums are going to be.
Craig, I want to toss it to you. Is anything you want to give a shout out to that you find particularly useful?
Well, I wouldn't say I find it useful yet, but I do want to give a shout out to the Crux team. That is a project that is building a DIY hardware wallet in the same kind of tradition as you have certain other ones like Spectre DIY and Seed Signer. But I really like the way this team is going about it. They're kind of gradually building it up. They're thinking very carefully about the security elements of it. They're kind of just doing the necessary things. They're not trying to go for all the bells and whistles too fast. That's a big mistake, I think, with hardware wallets. You generally want the hardware wallet to focus on security ahead of all other concerns. And I like the way that they're doing that. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that project progresses. I'm looking forward to using future iterations of it. I think it's going to be interesting, particularly because it's built by people in the Global South. It's kind of designed for that market. That's a market that I, obviously, living in the Global South, have a particular passion for. I would like to see people kind of coming up with their own secure solutions that don't require products from companies that are built in more wealthy areas of the world. I kind of just want people to be able to find ways that don't tie their personal identity to Bitcoin-related purchases. There's a lot to like there, so I'm hopeful that we're going to see great things.
Awesome. I did try Crux out and made a little video on it a couple months ago, and really, really cool to see these DIY projects popping up, and it was actually pretty. Not too difficult to put together, which was awesome. So yeah, Joe, I want to toss to you before we jump to break and then come back and get why you're bullish. What do you want to give a shout out to in terms of tools?
Nice. I think it's got to be BIP47 and reusable payment codes, because I can now chuck an address online and people can send money to it. and it's a bit more private than using just, a regular Bitcoin QR code. And I do it through Blue Wallet just because I've been a Blue Wallet maxi for a while, and it's been great. Hasn't exactly like changed my life, but it's just made my life a bit easier and a bit more private, and that's what I like to hear from Bitcoin tools generally. So yeah, I think it's maybe like 6 months old. Is that right? I don't really know. I don't keep the rest of the. Is it not?
No, actually, it's actually been around for like at least eight years. It's really old.
Oh dear.
Here's also a fun fact: if you run knots, your node will not support BIP 47.
Oh my god! So I'm tempted, still tempted. I haven't clicked the button yet to switch it to knots, but I guess now I shouldn't, right?
Well, it's so the reason is that the payment code, that little code that you use, takes up more than 40 bytes, and knots restricts its op returns to 40 bytes. So as a result, you can't share enough information. You basically have to share this kind of way in which you can exchange keys with whoever you're paying. And there's just not enough space in 40 bytes to cryptographically do that. So that's why.
So interesting. Okay, well, there you go. Take that, spam filters. I want to keep my payment codes. Let those JPEGs be on the train. Yeah. I'm joking in case anyone clips this and tries to troll me. But thank you, Craig. This is why we love that.
Joe, pro spam. Yeah. All right, gents, we're gonna do a quick final shout out to sponsors, and then Joe, I'm coming back to find out why you were bullish in just a moment. So we'll see you guys in a sec. Looking for a simple and secure way to manage your Bitcoin on mobile? AQUA Wallet has you covered. It's user-friendly and puts you in full control of your Bitcoin with secure self-custody. AQUA also supports Lightning and Liquid Network, making fast, cheap Bitcoin payments and asset transfers easier than ever. Plus, it even supports stablecoins, giving you ultimate flexibility. Built on open source code, AQUA is transparent, trustworthy, and perfect for beginner and pros alike. Ready to upgrade your Bitcoin experience? Click the link in the show notes or scan the QR code on the screen now to download AQUA Wallet today. Securing your Bitcoin doesn't have to be complicated or invasive. With NUNCHUK's HONEYBADGER plan, you get state-of-the-art multisig with built-in inheritance planning and no KYC required. NUNCHUK is trusted by users to secure billions of dollars in Bitcoin. The HONEYBADGER plan offers 204 assisted multisig, guiding you step-by-step on mobile or desktop. It works seamlessly with hardware wallets like TapSigner, ColdCard, Jade, and plenty of others, so you're always in control. Plus, with non-KYC inheritance planning, you can ensure your Bitcoin goes to your loved ones. No private info needed. Take control of your Bitcoin today. Click the link in the show notes or scan the QR code on the screen to check out the HONEYBADGER plan. CoinKite has been in the game for years, creating hands down the best and most secure hardware when it comes to securing your Bitcoin. The ColdCard Q is an absolute powerhouse and my daily driver, and it's ideal for newcomers and advanced users alike. The TapSigner gives you a low-cost, user-friendly option for those just getting started or for convenience when traveling. You can head to coinkite.com and use code Btcsessions for discounts, or simply scan the QR code on the screen to get started right away. All right, we are back in, and Joe, I'm looking at you. You look incredibly bullish there. I just need to find out why. So what's top of mind for you this week?
Especially now my camera has finally cooled down and is no longer having a hissy fit, because that was quite annoying. Have you ever used those camera cooling things that you put inside the camera itself?
I've not. What kind of camera are you using?
The cheapest Sony on the market.
Okay, so you need to switch it to 1080p instead of 4K because.
Oh, will that do it?
Yeah, yeah, it overheats at 4K. I'm probably using the same thing.
Okay, understood. Well, there you go. Thanks. I've learned so much in this while we're bullish. That's why I'm bullish. I'm learning so much off you guys. But no, I was going to talk about how the West is crumbling. I just lived through a power cut, a 24-hour power cut in a developed country, in Portugal, like not this Monday, the Monday before. And it was a giant reminder to me, and especially to my sort of local community here, that we cannot rely on Europe the way we could do maybe 10 or 15 years ago. and that we need to start thinking more and more about local communities. And guess what? Bitcoin is the best tool to empower local communities, and I've documented loads of them doing that. And so I wanted to share with you a few of those examples in this why you're bullish, and to try to shine a light a little bit more on stuff that's happening outside of the West, because the Twitter news cycle, the Bitcoin news cycle, it all tends to focus on the West a little bit too much. So I brought up Jimmy Costro in Chiang Mai already. He's a really cool dude who is helping to build this sort of Bitcoin learning center and a Thai Bitcoin community around it. And when you tend to like put a flag on the ground in an interesting place that's got like a good quality of life, you tend to see sort of Bitcoiners like slowly gravitating there. So I was there in November, and I met some very interesting Bitcoiners. I don't want to dox anyone, but yeah, great conversations were had, and you could really sort of sense that sort of momentum of people realizing, okay, let's do what we can in our surrounding area and create not just Bitcoin bonds, but sort of social bonds, so that when there is
Oh no, did we lose Joe
or something, you already have a
oh no, there you are, we got you.
Oh my god, is it overheating and underheating again? Okay, I'll be quicker in that case, or should I'll just switch to this camera.
You're all good. We can hear you now. I think you dropped a little bit.
Okay. Well, in Kenya, they're making amazing strides with being able to completely live on a Bitcoin standard, because you have a bunch of NGOs that are trying to use Bitcoin as a tool. And this is a more broader topic, the idea of NGOs using Bitcoin. I know that charities and NGOs are looking at Bitcoin a bit more seriously. And that's something that you can point at to in debates with your friends about Bitcoin and be like, no, listen, Save the Children is taking Bitcoin seriously. Why aren't you? Or this NGO in East Africa is taking Bitcoin seriously. You know, that's not burning the oceans or destroying the planet. And the final one, what's the other community I want to talk about? I think it was Madeira again, but I've spoken about Madeira.
So I'm heading back to Madeira in summer of 2026. I'm going to spend the whole summer there. So,
really?
Because I loved it so much for Bitcoin Atlantis that I had to go back.
It's great, isn't it? And there's a lot of Bitcoiners there, and it's local. You know, that the idea that you can fix things locally, you can sort of congregate and get together locally and sort things out, and you don't have to rely on these sort of crumbling institutions. So, and that was just something that I noticed during this power cut. It was the weirdest thing, like a total blackout in a metropolitan city in Europe where nothing worked. So payments didn't work. Your mobile phone didn't have data or an internet. It did for the first couple of hours, and then that just sort of conked out. So naturally, I've since bought a Starlink. I've tried to onboard more Bitcoin merchants locally, and I've tried to sort of put more roots down with the local Bitcoin movement. And you'll notice with these Bitcoin movements locally that they tend to be aligned. Like you end up having more than just one thing in common. That's a classic trend with Bitcoiners around the world. But the ones living near you will be able to help you out in ways that you weren't aware of. So yeah. Stop relying on centralized archaic systems, guys. I'm bullish on Bitcoin being local.
This is definitely something that I can get on board with. But not only are all Bitcoiners, or a large amount of Bitcoiners, just crazy preppers in general, which is definitely the trajectory for a lot of people that I circulate around with, but. Again, the self-sovereignty piece, removing yourself from the legacy system is, I think, important, and makes it puts a check on everything, because if people can still function and build communities and get everything that they need, money that isn't controlled by government, then that means that governments don't really have a power play there. And so I think it's really necessary, like when people go out and say, why spend your Bitcoin? Why use your Bitcoin? It's because you need to be able to know how to do that in an instance where the powers that be deem it not money, and you're not allowed to use it, or like if you're in a jurisdiction where they just say you're not allowed to transact for whatever reason. Again, this happened in Canada, but there's plenty of other instances of people being financially censored. You use the censorship resistant option, and in an instance like that where you have no way to actually use it peer-to-peer, you don't know anybody that accepts it, you don't know anybody locally, you haven't formed those connections, then you're kind of stuck, and you really, really have to navigate around actually utilizing your Bitcoin. You can, life finds a way, you can find a way, but how much better would you feel if you were like, I already get most of my stuff with Bitcoin. I know how to do that. So any type of financial censorship, just completely, I can completely route around it. And so, I mean, this was the impetus for we made the SAT market here in Calgary. And so this is the little website that we did, but we do this a couple times a year. It's,
Nice.
and now I can call up my plumber or my personal trainer, or go get a haircut, or get a rancher nearby that will bring me all my beef and all of this different stuff because of the beginnings of this market. And so, it makes us locally self-sufficient in Bitcoin. So I love it.
Did you ever consider renaming it to the mega Bitcoin market, with people being confused about the denomination? Or
only high-end items at the mega Bitcoin market? We've got Bugattis and things like that. Yeah.
No, that's very cool. And yeah, I just see more and more of this popping up, and the more and more I document it, the more and more I feel like people see it, and then they're like, hey, I can do that too. And then I'm like, yes, please do it. I'm sharing it because I want you to think that you can do it. And it's just, it's really, really cool that there are these kind of initiatives where people are thinking locally. And I don't know, like I grew up in an environment where you do just end up sort of being coached or coerced into relying on others and relying on someone else to do it. And it's like, no, Bitcoin is about self-actualization, as well it is about, holding your own keys and running a node and everything, because that's the responsibilities on you, and the accountability is with you. And I think that is also a big vote for localism, not localism in the sense of territorialism, but just thinking more local, instead of thinking, oh well, there's the nation will sort it out, the state will sort it out. It's like, no, you can change things, you can build things, and you can set up your own local market if you want to, and you can start to transact locally. And to the people that are thinking, oh well, if there is a blackout, you can't use the Bitcoin. So, well, this is why I have the Starlink, and this is why I'm getting solar panels, and this is why we'll have generators. And as you mentioned, Ben, yes, a lot of Bitcoiners are quite hardcore preppers, and so they're already ready for this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they're not just ready for this, but they're also ready for the psyops that follow, because they know that it's going to be caused by someone somewhere out there, and that's going to change your behavior.
Yeah, the power outage happened because the oceans were boiling from Bitcoin miners.
Well, we had it. The biggest rumor at the time was that Russia was invading Portugal, which even saying out loud is just hilarious. But people were genuinely terrorized for a few hours because there was no information and there was no electricity, there was no power, and people just weren't ready for it. And it's quite like a weird situation. It was very reminiscent of the first couple of days of the pandemic during the lockdowns, when people just panic bought toilet roll, and all the shelves were empty. Like, that did happen in some pockets of Portugal. We were fine. I was near the beach, so most people were just like, well, sod this, let's go surfing, which was fun. But
no, that's great. And again, to the local point, I was just at a conference last weekend locally here in Calgary, but so I'm in Alberta, and since the election, there's been a big push on the Alberta separation movement.
Whoa.
Yeah, and so there was already, prior to the election, there was somewhere in the 30 to 35% support within Alberta of separating from Canada. A recent poll post-election, I think in the past couple of weeks, pegged it closer to 45%. And so it needs, and on top of it, the premier of my province just passed in is passing in legislation that will lower the threshold of signatures required in order to spur on a referendum on whatever citizen initiated initiatives rather that want to be voted on. And so it makes it much, much easier. I think it's 177,000 signatures are required to make a referendum go forward. There's 4.5 million people in Alberta. So it's a relatively low threshold to spur on a referendum. And it requires over 50% of the vote in order to actually begin negotiations for separation. So I was at this event, very Alberta-centric, and a lot of people of the separatist movement there. And I basically made the case that they need to all be learning about Bitcoin, because in an instance where we literally watched our country shut down bank accounts because of political opinions that were not towing the line, what do you think is going to happen in the face of a separatist movement? All of your bank accounts are going to be shut down. And so I said, a sovereign people needs a sovereign money, and you need to start learning about this now. And we've got some very interesting people that started saying, oh, we need to start learning. And actually, a handful of the people that were there at that event are now going to be part of the next SAT market, which is great. So, yeah. So
congrats, man.
So we're building, whether or not this whole separation thing comes to fruition, we're still building a much more sovereign mindset here in Alberta, which is great to see. And I think Bitcoin's going to be a part of it.
Nice. What's it called? Is it like Albert out? Chowberta? It's got to have like a punchy, catchy, Brexit or Grexit, or
Well, because we're all in the West, so there was a Wexit movement for a while.
That's quite good. Okay.
But it's basically, it's just like there's the Alberta Prosperity Project is one. There's a bunch of disparate groups that all generally want the same thing. So the real question is, do enough of them come together and agree to disagree on the smaller points for a period of time, just to kind of get things moving? I don't know, but there's definitely a lot of talk about it, more than I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's the hardest bit about these movements, is uniting under a common front. I mean, we see that in Bitcoin the whole time, right? If we'd spent a little bit less time infighting and a bit more time advocating and educating, then maybe we'd be a bit further. Yeah. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah. Craig or Rizzo, did you guys want to tag into the kind of localization using your Bitcoin community topic here?
Sure. I'll give a perspective. I live in Africa. The advantage, there are obviously disadvantages, which everyone in the West knows about, but the advantage of living here is that you have to be more self-sufficient from the get-go. You don't really have a choice. And so for those who are kind of wondering where in the world they might want to go to, assuming that they do, do consider the so-called developing world as well, because it gives you that ability to move into a place where the rules are much freer. There's just isn't that much control. And you would be amazed at how much easier it is just to do the thing that you want to do, simply because there isn't the money and government capability to say no. It just, the regulations aren't there, or the enforcement of them just isn't there. And I'm not advising that people go and break the law, but I am saying that it's just easier to go and create the world that you want to live in, create the space that you want to live in a developing world nation. So definitely think about that, because to be honest, I would struggle to see myself living full-time in the Western world. I just love the freedoms that I have here. And I don't want to live in a place where, and frankly, I've been to those places and spent a lot of time in the Western world, and it's just, I immediately feel that my freedoms are being impinged upon. It's just a feeling. It's not necessarily something that I can, you can always say, well, there's a way to do X or Y, but it's a feeling that you have because you're living in a highly regulated part of the world. So yeah, that's my.
There's there's a correlation between government inefficiency and greater freedom, I would say.
There's freedom in the gray, like I feel a bit like that in Portugal. It's, I think, why I ended up spending most of my time here, because it's such a wonderfully poorly regulated country. And because there is so much bureaucracy, but a lot of it doesn't make sense, there's a lot of like chaos, and there's a lot of freedom in chaos. And so you'll get 4 different answers, like even when it comes to like tax or something, you'll get different answers from different advisors and different lawyers, because they're all interpreting it differently. And so you're like, well, what am I supposed to do here? And For a lot of people, though, if you do grow up in the West, in a hardcore sort of westernized regulated world where you do have to ask permission as opposed to saying sorry, then it can be quite not trapping, but it can be quite scary because you feel like you're doing something wrong. And so you almost have to unlearn that behavior. And I feel like that's another thing that Bitcoin sort of helps you to unlearn, because, you know, it's like when you show someone Bitcoin for the first time and they're like, but where do I put my name and address and my email address? Where do I dox all my information, you know? And you're like, well, that's the beauty of it. And they're like, but that's scary. And it's like, no, this is how it should be. This is what cash is like. This is, you know, we should have that right to privacy. And we almost have to remind people sometimes that, you know, we need to care about these things, and Bitcoin is one of those catalysts to helping you care more about those things. And yeah, it starts local for me, and maybe for some of you it starts in Africa.
Pete, how about yourself?
Well, I don't have any inspiring stories here, being in New York, which is you know, the state of New York, which is one of the most restrictive areas. But appreciate you guys inspiring me to get out there and do more. Yeah, I you know, we've been kind of in a hectic environment here lately, so I feel like my home setup is in need of a refreshing. I think I mentioned that estate planning stuff, but yeah, headed out to the Bitcoin conference in a couple of weeks, so hoping to maybe get some new bells and whistles to start tinkering with. But you know, not the most sophisticated technical user here, and certainly a late adopter, right? I always say there was a reason I didn't buy Bitcoin in 2013. It had very little to do with the appeal of the concept, and more about my heart rate when I deal with different technologies that you know, I find difficult. So you know, I think I showed you the kind of metal stamps before. You know, that's where I'm at in terms of comfort level. You know, and I don't know. I try to bring that feedback when I use products, but I will say I'm not the most tech savvy individual.
I mean, Rizzo, I'm bringing up bits from 8 years ago, telling you they're news. So don't listen to me.
Well, I quick question for you, Pete. Did you need a bit license to come on this podcast today, or?
I don't know. I should have checked. It's probably should report myself. Self-report.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're gonna have a knock at the door sometime soon. But well, gentlemen, I think this is an appropriate place to put a bow on the episode. I did want to say a huge thank you to all you gentlemen for coming on and getting bullish with me. And of course, everybody watching, check in the show notes so you can follow up on everything that these guys are up to, and check up on all their stuff. Of course, Sparrow Wallet, fantastic tool. Joe is putting out incredible content on the regular, visiting Bitcoiners around the globe and finding out about Bitcoin adoption. And Pete, you've been putting out content like crazy as well. Always up on the latest and greatest of what's going on in Bitcoin. And so, yeah, very excited to have had you guys. And yeah, I guess we'll round it out here. So thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Lovely to see you guys as well.
Everybody.
Cheers, guys. Everybody, have a great evening. Cheers, this has been your daily session. We'll see you guys soon.
Awesome.